1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move. Whatever click you choose, you better
Say what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to Life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. You're down! For those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. Yeah, that's me gassing right there on that intro, and if you want to get that song, it is available for purchase only from me on a 10-song EP that you can get on a digital download link. If you're interested, hit me up on my email, 16tolifemusic@gmail.com, Cash App, PayPal, or Zelle me $20. And I'm going to get it to you ASAP. Also, if you want to check out some more of my music, just type in 16 to Life gas stations or go to my YouTube playlist and scroll down to gas stations and you will find a lot of my music there. If you're new to the channel and you want to catch up on some of my older content, I'm telling you, I got some hilarious stories, things that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. A lot of boo-bops, boop-bop, beep-bop. Dudes getting them lefts and rights with all they might. Go to my YouTube playlist, check out Binge Watch the Best, and I'm telling you, you will definitely find a lot of stuff that's gonna have you amused. Now let's hop right up into this video, man. So some of you guys may remember this situation when you had an individual by the name of Eddie Dillard said that as a form of punishment, he was put in a cell with a well-known, recognized, notorious California booty bandit as punishment. So let me get right into his story, and then I'm gonna break down some facts and some myths surrounding that whole entire situation. So here's what he had to say when he was interviewed. I believe it was on a 60-minute news report.
The Department of Corrections was willing to allow at Corcoran State Prison those conditions to exist in which a prison inmate was encouraged knowingly to commit against another inmate and get away with it.
Case in point, Wayne Robertson, a convicted murderer and known sexual predator. He's nicknamed the Booty Bandit. Investigators say he raped at least 15 inmates, many of whom were thrown in his cell for punishment. Meet number 16, Eddie Dillard. He's out of prison now and has started a family, but back in 1993, Dillard was serving time for assault with a deadly weapon when he got into a fight with a female officer. For punishment, the guards at Corcoran State Prison locked Dillard up in a cell with Robertson.
He gets mad and tries to strike me. We start fighting in the cell.
Start fighting in the cell?
Yeah.
You at 120 pounds and he at 200.
It's really not no fight. It's really him tossing me around the cell.
And
he like wrestles me down. He's trying to like pull at my underwear. And you know, I'm like, nah, and I'm hollering for the COs, kicking on the door. Nobody never come and just leave me in there.
Over a period of 3 days, Robertson raped Dillard twice and tried once to force him into oral sex.
How can you expect for a person to be subjected to that type of cruelty and then expect them to come out back into society and be productive after being scarred like that?
So now I did a lot of research on this case, right? And so I'm gonna break it down according to the research that I was able to find now. So initially, Eddie Dillard, who was a very small stature, some say maybe about 5'6", 5'7", somewhere between 130 to 150 pounds. He initially encountered Wayne Robertson, who he was said to be between 6'2" to 6'4", 240 to 260 pounds. And he was in prison for murder and he had a life sentence. Eddie Dillard only had several years. And so initially they met at a prison known as Vacaville, or some people will call it California Medical Facility. Now, back in those times, it was routine to send individuals there for sometimes medical evaluations. Wayne Robertson happened to be there for a psychiatric evaluation. So at some point in time, these dudes have an encounter. I don't know if they tried to put him in the cell together then, but at some point in time, Wayne Robertson tried to basically make some sexual advances toward Eddie Dillard. Eddie Dillard, of course, rebuffed those advances. I believe he reported the situation, and they were supposed to be listed as enemies. Now, when you're in the California Department of Corrections, if you happen to get into it or have a altercation with an individual, if you guys do not happen to sign a marriage chrono, which is basically a chrono saying that, hey, I have no problem with this individual, me and this guy can still be on the same yard. If you happen to have a violent encounter with an individual and you don't sign those marriage chronos, then you guys will be documented as enemies, right? So at some point in time later on, both Eddie Dillard and Wayne Robertson are moved to another prison in Corcoran. Now, when they first encountered each other at Vacaville, that was somewhere around 1991, 1992. So fast forward to both of these individuals are now housed at Corcoran Prison in 1993. Now, at that time, Wayne Robertson was a well-known booty bandit. Now, accounts differ on how many actual assaults on other convicts that he had, right? Sometimes you may hear the number 15, and the reports are as high as 21. You know, he was a very confrontational individual, and you had a lot of convicts making these allegations against him. So he would always often be put in the hole, you know, due to his prison behavior, right? So now you may have heard rumors about Eddie Dillard allegedly kicking a female staff, and that's why he was placed in the cell with this dude Robertson, right? But from all the research and stuff and the reports that I read, there was no documentation on that situation, right? At most, it was said that Dillard was just a defiant, combative, disruptive prisoner, right? He talked back, he filed a lot of grievances and things of that nature, right? So he's placed in the cell with Robertson, right? They take him to ADSEG one day and place him in the cell with Robinson. Now, soon as he sees who he's going in the cell with, he tells the officers, hey man, listen, I can't go in the cell with this dude. Me and this dude is enemies. We don't get along, so on and so forth. You know, he tries to explain, you know, the confrontation they had at another prison, and the guards, once again, placing him in the cell with this dude. They don't care about anything that he has to say. They're not trying to hear his pleas, because once again, this dude, Wayne Robertson, according to the testimony later on in the trials, and even his own testimony, testified to that, yes, at a lot of times, COs would put unruly prisoners in there, or prisoners who they had fallings out with, as a punishment, right? So Dillard is trying to say, hey man, no, I can't go in the cell with this dude, and the guards don't want to hear what he's talking about. So he goes in the cell and he gets sexually attacked soon after by Robertson, right? So once again, when he sees a guard, he says, hey man, listen, I got to get out of the cell. Listen, man, you know, this dude is in here doing things against my will, so on and so forth. They ignore him, you know, they ignore him. So he stays in the cell a couple of more days, and over the course of those days, he said that he is assaulted a couple of times, and Robertson tries to make him perform oral sex on him, which he refuses, right? So after a couple of days, a guard walks by, and he's eventually able to scream and holler his way out of that cell, you know, and so he goes on to, you know, document or describe to these officers what happened, you know, and these officers really don't want to basically deal with him, but he's making such a fuss that, you know, eventually reports get taken down, so on and so forth, right? So now fast forward later on to some type of way, you know, 60 Minutes gets involved in it. These guards, they all, you know, their names come up and all this type of stuff, and eventually the guards are charged and they go to trial somewhere around 1999. Now ultimately, the guards are found not guilty. And the reason that the jurors said they found the guards not guilty is because they could not come to believe that beyond a reasonable doubt, the guards had their intentions was to get this dude assaulted by putting him in the cell, because so when all this stuff came out, right, I think something that extremely hurt Eddie Dillard's chances of getting these guards convicted is there was no documented proof that these two were enemies. Like I mentioned and told you guys earlier, when you happen to get into it with an individual, if you guys don't sign the marriage chrono, and I'm sure in that case right there, Dillard would have been willing to sign a marriage chrono. There was no information. There was no documented evidence that these two had a prior encounter. So therefore, the guards were saying that we didn't know. How was we supposed to know when there was no evidence, right? So the jury ultimately did not believe that that was their intention. Also, what was extremely odd about the whole entire situation is there was also no documented evidence on why Dillard was even being placed in ad seg that day, which is administrative segregation. Normally, it's a rule of practice that when a convict or a prisoner goes to the hole, it must be documented why he's going to the hole. You cannot just on a whim send a dude to the hole. So he has to have a lockup order or a rules violation report, which is known as a 115 or RVR. And it states, okay, today we're putting Chill in the hole because Chill, became disruptive. He hit a guard. He threw some trays in the chow hall or whatever the reason is, right? And this goes in what's known as your central file or a C file, right? So it was very odd that there was no documentation to even say why Dillard had been took to the hole and placed in the cell with this booty bandit, right? And so that was the argument of Dillard's attorney that, hey man, these dudes, was putting my client in the hole simply because they found him disruptive. He talked back, he wasn't a compliant prisoner, right? So even though there was even though there was definitely some funny business going on, ultimately those guards was still found not guilty. And that was in 1999, man. Then fast forward to the civil trial. He sued the prison, right? And I believe he sued some of the guards or whoever. But once again, the jury was just not convinced by the argument of Eddie Dillard's defensive team, and they ruled against him. And so he didn't gain any monetary damages or any type of thing. He didn't, he wasn't compensated for anything. And so that's how that went, right? But it was a cold situation because the guards routinely, according to the own testimony of Wayne Roberts at both trials, the guards routinely used him to take advantage, to brutalize dudes who they had a problem with. And once again, he was 6'2", 6'4", somewhere up in there, 240, 260 pounds, an extremely big dude who was often sent to the hole for his various and many altercations with other prisoners trying to do things. Like I said, it was alleged, up to 20 plus times that this individual was trying to force himself in an unwanted way on other prisoners. 1993, of course, was definitely a different time in terms of doing time in the California Department of Corrections. There was much more violence. There was much more racial violence. It was a lot of looking the other way by guards. A lot of guards, permitted certain acts in the name of, considering, hey, man, this is prison and these type of things go on in prison. You had a lot of guards who especially at that particular prison, Corcoran, would later be brought up on charges of doing things that was unprofessional, to say the least. Setting up these gladiator fights, releasing warring factions on the same yard in the hole, allowing these dudes to fight each other, then ultimately shooting these individuals with rifles, taking the lives of some of these dudes, man. It was just a lot of wicked and foul things going on back in those days, man. Anyway, you already know what it is. It's your boy 16 to Life. Resume normal program.